your letter of May 27th, seeking standards, and we are happy to grant you that standard and look forward to your leading the evidence of Gerald the Bank.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Commissioner. There is one small housekeeping matter. Captain Devaya has asked if it's necessary to continue this afternoon, if we could complete proceedings today at 2 p.m. I'm not sure if the Commission goes that far in time. If it does, we respectfully request the Commission consider that for us.
I take it that he has a good enough other reason for that. We have often been pointing to 3 and beyond. The good and compelling reasons.
You just expanded that, Commissioner.
To accommodate it for sure.
We would be most grateful. The reason is professional. Captain Devaya is associated with an airline that it's inaugural flight to Guyana. It's landing today at 4, and he has requested if it was possible for him to be at Jamiri, and he requires that time between 2 and 4 to get there.
Well, I'm glad that you provided the basis. I'm thinking that he might want to go to an early afternoon party. That would be no good and substantial reason, but I think you'll make the case.
Thank you,
Commissioner. It's going to be invited down to the stand.
Certainly.
Captain COI, you are free to stand or sit as you please. Make yourself comfortable and speak clearly so that we can all hear you. And you are free to consult your statement. Except that I note that there seems to be an earlier statement and Mr. Council.
Commissioner, there is one statement that is executed and will serve the purpose as being admitted as in evidence in chief. Commission's permission to then expand on that statement forward. There were previous versions of the statement that was given to the Commission earlier, but those are not part of these proceedings. The most recent statement is dated June 15, 2014. It consists of 12 pages and has an exhibit at the back of approximately 20 pages.
Mr. Kisun, I noticed that your last paragraph, 68, 69, some words are coming from there. And further, I see it NOTIs.
Commissioner, forgive me, I'm not certain of the copies that Commissioner that you have. But certainly, I have a clear copy that I can provide to the Commission.
But the one that we had before contains the same error, and we were just provided with a further copy this morning, and it contains the same 69.
Just to clarify, that 69 is supposed to read, and further, I say it not.
Say it not.
Yes, NOT.
Well, to the extent that the June statement is just being put before, one that I had read, and one dated the 29th of May, 2014. I don't know if there are such contradictions.
No, Commissioner.
Happy to know that, because we might have like to put it in inconsistency.
Commissioner, nothing has changed. The statement is simply been expanded. But just for the purposes of the record, the statement dated June 15, 2014 is the sole statement to be considered by the Commission for today's purpose of today's proceedings.
Thank you, and please proceed.
Thank you, Commissioner. Captain Devan, do you recognize the statement that's before you?
Yes.
Can you state whose signature is on page 12 of the statement?
My signature.
I think Mr. Kisuda need to for the record, state his full name and address and so on.
Very good.
It is being recorded as well.
Very good, Commissioner. Just for the purposes of clarification, I had envisaged entering this statement as an evidence in chief and then adducing its contents and amplifying them orally. Would that procedure be agreeable to the Commission?
I don't think that is different from what we've been doing previously. I think that's consistent in practice here.
Sir, please state your full name.
My name is Gerald Richard Logbook.
And do you recognize the statement that's before you?
Yes, I do.
And can you state whose signature is on the signature line of that statement?
My signature.
Commissioners, I respectfully move to have this witness statement tendered as Captain Devan's evidence in chief in this matter.
And the tag that we're going to put on it,
GG1. GG1.
GG1. We're happy to receive it, and so tidy. GG1.
Captain Devan, what's your current occupation?
I'm a pilot.
And can you
I'm a
state
businessman
from where you work?
at Rodney Airways.
And what does a Rodney Airways do?
We're a travel and tourism company.
And for how long have you been a pilot here?
Rodney Airways. From 1977. My mathematics.
Captain, if you're more comfortable sitting.
No, that's all right.
I think you're perhaps a little too close to the mic now. I think
Thank you, sir.
Do you hold any professional qualifications?
Yes.
Can you state what they are?
I'm an airline transport rated pilot, and I'm an examiner for the civil aviation project.
Do you hold any professional licenses?
Same license. It's an airline transport rated pilot license.
And can you state whether or not you currently sit on any public bodies?
Yes. Well, I sit as a board member of many commissions, both in the private and the public sector. As representing the private sector and the public bodies.
And can you state whether or not you hold any government or diplomatic posts?
I don't own any government posts, but I hold the honorary council of Barbados, the government of Barbados Gang. I represent Barbados' interests in Gang.
And can you state whether or not you have ever been bestowed any national award?
Yes. I was honored to receive the Golden Arrowhead Achievement.
What is your date of birth?
9th of November 1955.
And where did you grow up?
In Logbook in Sweden. In Dorset.
And did you, can you state whether or not you attended primary and secondary school?
Yes. I attended St. Mary's Roman Catholic School. And then I attended the Indian Education Trust College in Wolverhampton.
And what year did you matriculate from your secondary school?
Sorry, I didn't get first.
What year did you complete high school?
In 1974, I believe it was.
And after completing high school, what did you then do?
I voluntarily joined the National Service
And what year was that?
in the end of 1974, 75, somewhere.
And why did you join the National Service?
Do we need to get all of that?
I wanted.
No, you don't know.
I'm very Commissioner, we will proceed.
But I did join it because I wanted to learn the gang more. I wanted to expand my horizons, and National Service provided an opportunity in spectacular ways.
And how old were you when you joined the National Service?
I would have to do the math. I would believe maybe 20 years old.
Good, very good. And after completing the National Service, what did you then do?
But I never really completed National Service because being in the National Service was one aspect of my service. And for the rest of my life, I continued the National Service again. So I got a government scholarship, and I went on to the University of Emory University in the Economics Florida.
So I didn't hear the last word. You're in the what program, you said?
I won a scholarship from the government of Ghana scholarship, and I attended the Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in the Economics Florida.
And what did you study there?
Flight aviation technology.
And can you state whether or not you completed that program?
Yes, I did.
In what year did you complete that program?
In 1977.
And how old were you at the time?
Respectfully, counsel, I would probably need a calculator, but I was probably 21.
Can you give us the conditions, if any, upon which you were awarded the scholarship to study at Emory?
I think the government of the day was training a lot of young Guyanese in different disciplines, and they offered a scholarship around the public service, the Ghana Defense Force, the Ghana National Service, and I was a candidate from about maybe 100 young people from the National Service that was put up to a national pool of people where 12 was chosen, and I was one of the 12.
And upon completing your studies at university, what did you then do?
As part of the condition of that scholarship, I was contracted to serve for 5 years at an office in the Ghana Defense Force.
And did you do so?
Yes,
What year did you first join the Ghana Defense Force?
in 1977. When my studies were completed in the United States, I came back and was immediately enrolled in the Ghana Defense Force
And in what capacity did you join?
as a cadet officer and a training pilot.
And for how long did you stay with the Ghana Defense Force?
12 years.
And can you describe the circumstances of your departure from the Ghana Defense Force?
In 1988, I had resigned and continued in the reserve of the Ghana Defense Force, but I resigned voluntarily.
Can you, in general terms, describe your duties whilst you were in the Ghana Defense Force from 1977 through to your departure?
Well, when I joined the Ghana Defense Force, I was enrolled in the cadet office program, and after that program, I then began my flight training in the Army Air Corps, and I then served all my time in the Ghana Defense Force as an Army pilot, flying all kinds of missions, medical evacuation, search and rescue, maritime patrols, and general logistics support to the armed forces of the Ghana Defense Force.
In 1980, could you state whether or not your duties were different from those just described?
No.
And specifically in June of 1980, who was your commanding officer, if any?
The commanding officer of the Army Air Corps at the time was Lieutenant Colonel Logbook.
Can you describe in brief terms, the structure of the Army as you understood it to be?
As I understood it to be then, and you will forgive me because you will recognize that I was 22 years old, very junior. But from my own perspective, the Army, we had the Army Air Corps, we had the Maritime Corps, we had the Armed Forces, and so they were all, each one of these divisions of the Army had a commanding officer. So there was and I was in the Army Air Corps, and then the Air Corps itself was divided into the fixed wing division, with an officer commanding that division, and a rotary division for helicopters, with an officer commanding that division as well. And then overall, we had a commanding officer.
In which division were you assigned?
The fixed wing division of the Army Air Corps.
And do you recall who was the officers responsible for the fixed wing division and the rotary wing division?
I don't remember who it was for the rotary division, but I believe, and my memory may be clouded, but I believe it was at the time Captain David Baker. Captain David Baker was, when I got there, he was the chief pilot. He was the man who trained me, and apparently my first commanding gang, and his name is Captain David Baker.
And just to be clear, who would have been your officer in June 1980?
I would have to assume it was Captain Baker, because it was long ago.
Specifically, can you describe for us what your routine daily activities consisted of in June of 1980?
As an Army officer and as a pilot, it was extremely consistent every day. So as an Army officer, you're required to report every day to the drill square in the mornings for flag raising and then physical exercise. And then after you would have had breakfast with your fellow officers, you report to the hangar, to the airport hangar. And even if you didn't have to fly, our place was to be in the hangar, and then we will be carrying out adjutant duties. We would also be assigned to work alongside the maintenance personnel who are working on the aircraft, or we will be working in the operations room of the Army Air Corps, monitoring other flights, and so on.
Where were you stationed in June of 1980?
At the Camp Stevenson at Timerley International Airport.
And where did you reside in June of 1980?
1980.
In June of 1980.
In the place that I grew up in Lodge.
And when on duty, where did you spend your time when not at work?
But I'm not at work. We work 6 days a week and we have 1 day off. But even in those days off, you will still be at the Army base because you're basically required to be there continuously. And then there are times when you will be given time to go home, and this could be 1 day or 2 days a month sometimes. But you spend generally all your time at Camp Stevenson.
And when on duty in June of 1980, can you state how many days, if not all or none, that you flew?
From my memory, that would be difficult to tell you. But a pilot is required to log accurately every flight that he undertakes. And my logbook, which you have in front of you, is required by law for me to record every single flight, every airport where I depart from, what time I took off, what time I land, the aircraft registration. And so that logbook will tell you in 1980, every day, every minute of the day, where I was.
And did you in fact complete that logbook accurately?
Yes, and the reason I did it, first of all, it was a professional obligation, and second of all, it was a legal requirement by the Civil Aviation Department, because every 6 months that logbook had to be lodged with the Civil Aviation Department, And they, because every 6 months the pilot has to go through a complete recurrent check. So you go up with another pilot, he will put you through all the emergency systems, the engine failures and the fires and so on. And then you will do a complete medical examination. And then those documents will be submitted to the Civil Aviation Department. At this time they will evaluate the medical, evaluate your flight check that you were successful, and evaluate the logbook that you have to fly up to a number of hours every month to stay current. So the Civil Aviation would have done the due diligence in your logbook, it will stamp it every 6 months, and then hand it back to you. So that was a requirement by law.
And when do you complete the records contained in the logbook?
Immediately after every flight.
And can you describe for us what sort of records were recorded in the logbook?
I'll just repeat what I said. You record the date of the flight. You record the aircraft registration. You record the aircraft type, the type of the aircraft. You record who was the pilot in command. What was if you were a co-pilot, it will state what was your status on that flight, whether you were a co-pilot, whether you were the captain, and it will state the time of the aircraft, when the engines were started. In fact, it's very, very detailed. So you have what is called out time, and off time, and on time, and in time. So from the time you start the engine of the aircraft, you will record that time. From the time the aircraft taxis to the end of the runway, then when you take off, you record that time. When you land it, you record that time. When the aircraft parks, you shut the engines down, you record that time. So they're what we call flight times and ramp times. And normally it's about 2 or 3 minutes apart from each other.
I'm going to show you a copy of this book, Marshall.
This is a copy of the original.
This is the original.
Sorry, the original, a book.
just shows the original logbook can be made there. Because of these are exercises. Take it back.
Captain Dubai, can you state what document is in your possession?
This is my personal logbook.
And can you state whether or not that's the original book?
This is the original.
Has it been changed in any way?
No, other than their child logbook, there are times when there may be scratches in terms of when you make a mistake in writing, so you make a correction. There are no fundamental changes in law.
Specifically for the entries made during the year of 1980, can you state whether or not those entries were contemporaneously made?
Yes.
Exercises as previously?
Yes, these that as these records are made, every aircraft carries a logbook as well. And every logbook is also meant to be filled up by the pilot. And so, exactly the same way that your personal logbook is filled up. So, that information is used to control and monitor the maintenance of the aircraft because of the very scientific detail with which aircraft maintenance is done. Every minute that the aircraft flies contributes towards the maintenance program of the aircraft so that the aircraft logbook will have exactly the same information in here in that logbook on the one hand. On the other hand, this information is also accurately and it should also accurately match the record that's kept by the control tower. So every time an aircraft moves on its own power in a controlled airport, as an airport with a control tower, you have to call the tower to get permission to move the aircraft. And if you're taxiing, the tower will record that information. The tower is the one, actually this information that's recorded here is information that is given to you from the control tower. So you could monitor it yourself, but the official time is the one given to you by the control tower. So when you take off, the control tower will report to you, you'll be airborne at 1900. And then the pilot can take that time and do his estimates along the way. So the control tower will accurately have all of the information that's reflected in this logbook.
Do you know the where?
Before you go any further, do I understand the witness to be saying that there was an aircraft logbook and a personal logbook?
Yes, every aircraft.
Okay, your answer is yes.
Yes.
What is it that is being circulated? Is that the aircraft logbook or the personal logbook?
Commissioner, Captain's personal logbook.
That's personal.
Yes.
What about the aircraft?
I'm just about to ask him about the aircraft logbook and his tower and the tower records. Captain Dubai, do you know the whereabouts of the aircraft logbook for the year of June 1980?
Specifically, no, and I really do not, on any kind of basis, would know where the records of the aircraft is kept, nor would I know where the control tower records are kept. But this is my personal responsibility. But I just wanted to correlate this with the control tower and the aircraft logbook to say that that's all this information we'll get as well. But I do not have any idea where the aircraft logbook is kept and where the control tower records will be kept, other than in those agencies I mentioned.
Commissioner, just to edify.
Yes, I wanted to know though whether the category on the list information is entered in the aircraft logbook. Is the same as the personal logbook?
It is entered, sir. The aircraft logbook is filled up after every flight.
Yes, I hear that. I want to know whether the information will be the same whether the categories under which you enter the information, whether those categories are distinct in both your personal logbook and the aircraft logbook.
Just the departure, that's your departure point, your arrival point, and the timing will be exactly the same. But the aircraft logbook will have other things inside. But in your personal logbook, there are things that is correlated to the pilot. In the aircraft logbook, you will have exactly the same timings that will show the departure point and the destination, and the timings of departure and arrival. But it will not, for example, show you, tell me who was the co-pilot. Well, in fact, it does, sir. I'm sorry, it really is.
Commissioner, if I may insist, Captain Ryan, do you know what the aircraft logbook records are for the year of June 1980?
What it is or where it is?
What they are?
Yes, I do.
Have you seen those records? Did you see those records at any point in time?
But I haven't seen it because I haven't filled it.
You fill the entirety of the aircraft logbook records?
Every time a pilot flies the aircraft, on that day, he will fill the aircraft logbook with the activities that he is being involved in the logbook. So, in his handwriting. So, if we were supposed to find the aircraft for that day or that time, it will have my handwriting inside with exactly the duplicate of this information.
And for tower control records,
I'm sorry, before you move on, because I think the chairman was trying to find out exactly what would be in this aircraft logbook, and the witness comments, but I'm not sure it finished. Could you rehearse it for me if you did?
certainly.
The aircraft logbook will have the aircraft registration.
So, let me interrupt you that time, because I want you to focus on what we regard as essential.
Okay.
What you have circulated here, we've had before, says nothing about the passengers.
Right.
It says nothing about the nature of the mission. You don't just play about, you play about for a particular purpose.
Correct.
That record says nothing about the purpose of the mission. It says nothing about the passenger or passengers that we carry. Yes. And I want to know if any of the records specifically will have information about those two factors.
Right. No, sir. The aircraft logbook will have nothing to do with the mission, with the purpose of the mission, not even my personal logbook. But there are other documents that will particularly deal with those issues.
Okay. What are those documents and where they are? One question at a time you answer.
Right. In terms of the documents that will tell you who the passengers, it's called a passenger manifest.
Yes.
That passenger manifest is filled up by the operations support staff, and it will be given to the pilot for the flight, for the duration of the flight. At the end of the flight, those documents are then retrieved by the operations department, and then they will be filed. The pilot won't keep that information.
But where would that aircraft manifest be in relation to that flight that you took on the 14th, that flight you made on the 14th? Okay, Randy? Right.
Any aircraft manifest on any day that I fly will be in the possession of the Head Defense Force. At that time, now we're talking 34 years ago, and I would still imagine that maybe there are parts that will be there. I don't believe that they're required to go, sir. I'm committed to say, even today, our records are only required to be kept for 6 months. After that, because you keep doing these things every day. So unless there's a reason to keep these records after 6 months, there's no requirement to do that by the civilization law.
What you do, you burn or you put them in the archive, what do you do?
But I don't know that, sir. I did not deal behind the scenes with what they did with those documents.
But just to clarify, when you say even today, you are referring to your obligations as a civilian, not in relation to what the Army practice or requirements are, because today you're no longer in the Army.
Well, while I was in the Army, my pilot license and the operations that we operated in the Army was always resembled civil operations.
Okay, I'm talking about the record keeping that the Army would have, and you wouldn't be able to speak to that today. Thank you.
Captain Gurvaya, in your long years as a pilot, have you ever had cause to go back to the passenger manifest beyond the 6 months? I want to know what is the practice. I know you said to us that the civil aviation requirements will require you for 6 months. Would you say generally the records are kept for longer periods? Has the chairman said been kept in the archive or something?
I don't recall myself having ever to go back to look at the passenger manifest in any length of time, other than maybe if we're doing an accident investigation. And there may be reasons to do that, to check weight and balance and so on. But I have never had reason to go back and look at the aircraft manifest in any extended length of time in the past.
Council to proceed, but make sure that you zero in the ones of interest and relevance to the inquiry.
Certainly, Commissioner.
Before council proceeds, the chairman had asked what documents or records would have information as to the passengers in crew and destination. And he identified one thing, the passenger manifest. I don't know if he was going to identify other records, or that was the only one he was seeing.
Or maybe I could describe what would happen now is the pilot task was to execute the mission as dictated to him by his superiors. When the pilot report to the operations center, they will say to you, you have 4 flights to do today, and this is the destinations you're going, these are the times, and that either you're flying soldiers today, or you're flying fuel, or you're flying civilians who are guests of the government, or guests of the chief of staff, or the commander of the force, or whatever. So then they will be the ones that will prepare the documents, which will also show the weight and balance of the aircraft, show the weight that you're and the pilot.
Sorry to interrupt. I think what the chairman wanted to hear was whether there were other documents that would record the destination, purpose, and/or passengers. Are you saying that the operations department would have such records?
Yes.
Captain, just to continue, you were describing the method in which instructions were given to a pilot or to yourself. If you could continue, you ended stating that the operations personnel would prepare.
Yes.
What would they prepare?
They were prepared with the manifest. They were prepared the flight plan. The flight plan will tell not only the pilot, but it will also tell the control tower what is the projected mission for this aircraft, so that the aircraft and the control tower will then file that into their system and expect that flight on that particular route. So the operations staff will prepare the flight plan, they will prepare the aircraft manifest, they will prepare a load sheet. The load sheet will tell you the weights that you're putting on the aircraft and how that balances the aircraft. The pilot task is when they hand those documents to you, you're meant to do due diligence of those documents, particularly on the weight and balance for the safety of the aircraft. Then those documents, a copy of those documents are put into the aircraft, a copy of those documents are kept on the ground in the operations center. And the reason for that is something should happen to the aircraft, then those documents will be to the aircraft and copies are kept on the ground. And at the end of the flight, those documents are retrieved by the operations and kept in the operations center. They're no business of the pilots.
Can you state whether or not passenger manifest would have been created for each and every flight that the pilot flew?
Today, absolutely. Back then, in the military, not always. We always will do the load sheets. But the nature of our military operations at that time did not always dictate that a manifest with passenger names would be given to the pilots. What will always be given to the pilots is a load sheet, dictating the weight and balance of the aircraft. So over the years, aviation has evolved, and today It's absolutely compulsory. Back then it was not.
And on June 14, 1980, do you know whether or not absent passenger manifests were given to you?
I really cannot recall. I would believe so, based on what the normal operations would be, but it's quite possible as well that it would not have been.
With respect to that, your activities on June 14, 1980,
Yes.
can you tell us how many flights you flew on that day, if any?
Yeah, I'm referring to my logbook.
Certainly.
And my logbook dictated here that I flew the first flight in the morning from Timeri Airport to Kwani. And I took off at 8 minutes after 9 o'clock. And I landed. And in fact, I beg to be corrected. But this logbook will show us from the time the aircraft engine started. So it will show that I started the engine of this aircraft at 12:08. And when I landed in Kwani, I shut the engines down at 9:57. So 9:08 and 9:57, which is a total of 49 minutes.
You mentioned the hour of 12:08.
Sorry, that was a British mean time, sir. Sorry, that's what we always record the time in the logbook using British mean time. And at that time it was 3 hours, we were 3 hours behind. Today we are 4 hours behind. So, but I mentioned it was
Translate that as
9 o'clock, 8 minutes after 9 in the morning.
And how many other
Millimeters. So I did the Kwani flight, I came back, and then I flew to Jaguar, and then I flew to Maru. So I did 3 missions that day.
given the nature of the evidence that we have received, it is the flight combined that we are particularly concerned about. So don't carry all over the world.
Certainly. Sure.
Okay? Focus on that flight.
With respect to the activities of June 14, 1980, can you describe for us what happened when you reported for duty?
And having looked at the logbook, my memory, I remember I got to work in the morning. And I was given my flight program for the day by the operations staff, which might have been a corporal or a sergeant in the Land Defence Force at the time. And I remember that there were some people standing in the hangar. It was a man, a woman, and some children. And I was instructed that these people would be applied to Kwani, and I come back and then go on to the other flights. And that is exactly what we did. The other flights were both military flights.
Who gave you your instructions to fly that first flight?
The instructions will be passed from the operations staff.
And do you recall the identities or description of any of the parties that gave you?
No, I don't.
Did you know who the passengers you were transporting? Did you know who they were?
No, I did not.
Have you ever seen them before?
No, I did not.
Did you receive any special instructions concerning the passage of these passengers?
No, I did not.
Did anyone speak to you concerning anything about these passengers?
No.
Referring to your logbook, just to be clear, you stated that you left at 9:08 a.m., is that correct?
Yes.
And referring to the logbook, it says that you landed at 9:51 a.m., is that correct?
That's correct.
It's 57 officers.
9:57.
9:57, forgive me, Commissioner, the full copy is unclear.
Yeah.
Can you say how long the aircraft stayed on the ground when you landed?
Well, the aircraft started at 10 o'clock, which would have been 3 minutes. From the time we shut the engine down to the time we started back the engine would have been 3 minutes. So it started back at 10 o'clock.
And when you landed at Kwani, what happened with the passengers?
Exactly what would normally happen in every flight. The captain, which I was at the time, would exit the cockpit, go to the back, open the door, allow the passengers off the aircraft, make sure they're cleared of the of the aircraft, and then we will lock the aircraft doors up and depart again.
Can you state who, if anyone, was waiting to receive the passengers?
I have no idea and I do not recall.
Can you describe in detail where the passengers went? Into a car, into a bus?
No, at Kokwani, the Kokwani runway is a gated, there's a fence around that runway. So really there's hardly anybody on that runway. In fact, other than security, they took the mine security. So when we landed, the passengers would have come off, and at the southern end of the runway, southern side of the runway, there was a shed, and the passengers would have walked to that shed. But I do not recall if there was anybody or any vehicle waiting. I do not recall.
Can you describe what conversations you were having with these passengers, if any?
Absolutely not.
And can you describe for us what the passengers look like, their facial features, clothing, and so on and so forth?
You know, I really, even if I saw the passengers today, I can't tell you that I will recognize them. I pay no special attention to them. And let me just make this point to you, sir, that it was not, as a military pilot, it was not unusual, and in fact, the protocol was, and we were very junior pilots at the time, we were second lieutenants, it was not unusual for the pilots of the Guyana Defence Force not to have discussions and conversations with their passengers. We lived in a very regimented way, and we flew those planes, we made sure the passengers were safe, but we had no business in conversation with our passengers. Which was not unusual.
Can you describe the demeanor of the passengers, meaning their emotional status of it?
There was nothing unusual. Nothing that caused me, there was no anomalies that I recognized that caused me to be concerned. And I want to say to you as a pilot, we are in fact very conscious of anomalies in our planes, anomalies in our mechanics, our crew members, and so on. And that day, I do not recall having any kind of concern or noticing any anomalies that would cause me to be concerned.
When you returned to Miri that morning, can you describe what conversations, if any, anyone had with you concerning these passengers?
Nothing at all.
Can you describe what conversations?
You were asking him about the passengers. This inquiry is concerned with the male passenger. You understand?
Yes.
We're asking about the male and children and so on. Are you interested in the male passenger?
Specifically, did you have any conversations concerning an adult male passenger that you
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
When you completed your day's activities, what happened on June 14, 1980?
I would have gone back to the officers' mess to have dinner, and then I would retire to my quarters.
Can you state whether or not you were aware on June 14, 1980 that Dr. Rodney had passed?
I did not know that Dr. Rodney had died through the day of the 14th, but I learned about it when I returned to my barracks at night, and I was listening to the radio, and I heard the broadcast on the radio. But during the day of my flight activities, I had no knowledge that he had died.
And after June 14, 1980, what happened next? Concerning the circumstances or your recollections dealing with the transportation of this male passenger?
There was nothing unusual, other than I think it was a couple of days after, I saw in one of the newspapers a picture of a person that was described as this man, Edwin Smith, that was involved or somehow related with the death of Dr. Rodney. And when I saw the picture of the person, I felt there was an anomaly then in my mind, that the person that I saw in the newspapers looked like the man that was on my plane.
Do you recall the newspaper that you
No, I
saw?
don't.
You know, smoking, all around. It's kind of relevant. Look at the fact.
not proceed too quickly. This is an important area.
Do you know for a fact that the man who
But what does he mean by that? It was coming back to you that the photograph you saw features square with the pictures of the photograph of the man that you actually took.
Yes, sir.
Do you know for a fact that the man that you flew was the man that you saw in the picture of the newspaper?
At the moment in time, and I remember this was an anomaly. I remember seeing the picture in the newspapers, and it was a very private moment for me. I remember seeing the newspapers, seeing the picture of the man, and I felt that the man that I was looking at in that picture, and it was not that picture, sir. It was a picture that seems to have been more frontal of the person, that looked like the man who was in my aircraft. But I never knew for sure.
And can you state with any certainty whether or not the man you transported in the aircraft was registered?
I really cannot say that with 100% certainty, but it was an anomaly in my mind when I saw the picture in the newspapers a couple of days afterwards.
The council, what I want to know is whether, given that an anomaly was triggered, and he had reason to believe that this man that he took there when he was 21, did you take any steps to ascertain whether it was the truth represented?
No, sir, I did not.
Why not? Was it of any interest to you?
Well, first of all, sir,
You might be part of the escape for him. Not that you would have done it on your own initiative. For example, did you go back to the passenger manifest to find out what was the name on the manifest? Anything of the sort?
no, I did not.
Now, this subsequently occurred to you that you might have assisted in his escape. Not voluntarily, but following instructions from superior officers.
I believe that context will be important here. Context of time and the kind of media reports that was being fed to the public, and the media reports and the information that ordinary people like myself will be getting. It did not identify, the news media did not identify him as the murderer. It identified him as a person that was identified. And so, the news media at the time that I was looking at, and the radios that I was listening to, while I knew there was a connection between what happened and the man who I'm seeing in the newspapers because of the allegation that was being, I at the time did not. I knew there was an anomaly. And particularly as well, sir, because I was in the military, and I know that in context it's very difficult for people to understand this. In the military, as a lieutenant, you do not question, and you do not go behind the scenes to investigate. And I did not. If in retrospect and hindsight I should have, I did not.
Yeah, but was it the duty of the military? You looking back, might have been asked to do something very improper. Was it the duty of the military to provide escape for killers?
Absolutely not, sir.
Well, that must have worried you, given what you were hearing said, what was being reported in the media.
So like I said, with due respect, in context at the time, the media reports that the country was subjected to was media reports that did not identify this man like you just described him. It described him as a possible accomplice. He was, nobody at the time knew for sure.
Mr. Kublai, don't carry the trouble. Listen to me carefully. You haven't seen the photograph days after.
Yes.
It occurred to you that there was an anomaly.
Yes.
This man, Gregory Smith, who's being figured as the man who was involved in the death of Rodney, flew with me.
Sir, he was not fingered in the media that I was looking at.
But
He was not fingered in the media that I was looking at, nor was he fingered in the media I was listening to.
no, but you told us that when you saw this photograph in the newspaper, in the context of being involved with Rodney, it occurred to you that that is the very man that I know.
Yes.
The implication of that, and if that report is true, that you will provide an escape on instructions for a killer. Did you privately ask to speak to a superior officer?
No.
But did it burden your conscience?
No.
It didn't trouble you at all?
No.
So why not?
Because, sir, again, in context as a military officer, over the years, I have been involved in many operations and missions in Guyana. And unfortunately, the incident of Dr. Rodney's death fell into the category of many of those type of, today as you look back on it, in hindsight, they're national, historical, and spectacular events. But at the time, as a young Army officer, it was not my business.
But speak to us, man, with more specificity. Were you involved in providing escape for criminals, for killers? You said that it appeared to be normal. Were you involved in that sort of thing before?
Absolutely not, sir. I was a military officer.
But what
I
you
executed
mean
mentor.
by you said it needs to be normal?
Perhaps I can interject here, Commissioner. Just
I would prefer the witness to answer. You may want to object and you'll have the opportunity to do that, but I would prefer him to answer.
I wanted to rephrase it because
Normal. In the context of the times you had been involved in similar missions, what does all that mean? That you were provided escape the military and you flying the aircraft on previous occasions involving criminals, men who committed wrong. Tell us what you mean when are you evidence?
well, I don't think that I said here that I have provided an escape plan for criminals and murderers.
It is normal.
What I said, sir, with due respect, is that as an Army officer, a very junior Army officer at the time, we were involved in many operations, many activities that I myself had no idea about what was, like for example, let me give you an example. I had no idea who Walter Rodney was as a young 21-year-old, 22-year-old Army officer. I had no idea of the man's enormous international status. I had no idea who he was. Whether he was in fact a good man or a bad man, I really did not know at the time, in context. Today, he's a man of tremendous international status with tremendous respect. So I did not know at the time.
But as soon
Yes.
immediately following his death,
Yes.
all of his background and achievements were paraded before the public of Guyana, the entire Caribbean, and the world. So if it didn't know before he died, it certainly knew immediately after. Is that not true?
Well, sir, again, what I read is that Walter Rodney was expelled from Jamaica. I understand that he was expelled from Africa. And so, while there were people who had tremendous respect for him on one hand, there were many people as well on the other hand who felt that he was involved in questionable activity.
I'm sure that you learned more than that he was expelled.
I think he was expelled.
I've used his language. He was not prevented from entering. But you learn much more. You're the one to emphasize what is your mind the negatives.
Yes, sir.
But you learn much more. You learn about the enormous amount of things. Was that not the case for you?
Sir, you know, with also due respect, there may be people who admire Walter Rodney and who follow his career. I certainly did not.
Yeah, but apart from that, he was a fellow human being. He had a right to live. So the fact that he was killed in violent circumstances like that did not concern you, whether you have a like person or not.
I didn't say it like you, sir. I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I'm saying to you, when I speak today, I can only speak in the context of where I was there 4 years ago. Today, my views are very solid. I am very strong in my conviction, what I believe today. Back then, 34 years ago, I'm trying to explain to you where my mind was, where I was. If you ask me today what I believe, it will be a completely different matter. 34 years ago, I was a young army officer. I was a second lieutenant, following instructions, very obedient person who was very honored to be serving my country in uniform. And I followed my instructions with pride and dignity. And I never for 1 minute believed that that flight was one where I transported any criminal or anyone. I did not know it then. And over the years, not something that I ever discussed, because it was just on military protocol to do.
Just again.
Sorry.
Yeah, just one question. I'd like to understand that. So it occurred to you that this man went to the man Smith, that has been identified as the man who was involved in his death. You were indifferent as to whether that was so or not, because you took no steps to ascertain. Is it that you were indifferent 34 years ago to whether that was the same man that was involved in his death or not?
I guess if you permit me to.
You seem to have difficulty answering direct questions with brevity and direct.
Well, sir, because we are talking about context of 34 years ago. But I would say to you, as a young man trained in the army at the time, but I myself read what I read in the state media. I myself had some questions in my mind. And that is why I was not fully impressed with what had happened. In this sense, I could not understand as a young man that Walter Rodney would have gone by himself with his brother in the middle of the night, because I read this report in the I didn't read the report in the
The
Caribbean.
question is, were you indifferent as to whether how he was involved, following instructions,
And who was involved?
whether you, were you indifferent as to whether or not it happened that I was involved with you in transporting the man who had killed Rodney?
No, sir. I never considered myself involved in that.
You were indifferent.
No, the question is whether you were indifferent.
Commissioner, perhaps now's a good time for us to simply allow Captain Guy to explain why his reaction was what he's saying it was.
Yes, we want him to be given every opportunity, but he's very elusive. He's not answering the questions asked.
Well, one thing this question may help.
No, I'm sorry. I would like to try because I was going to hold these questions until the end, but they called it directly from the chairman. And I just want to understand from Mr. Gavai. You said you read something the day after, or you heard news after you returned from Papani on the 14th of June. Am I correct? You heard some news.
I said I heard the news on the radio.
All right. Could you tell me? I wasn't here at that time, 34 years ago. What radio station was this?
Sorry, but
What radio station?
it was the government. There was one radio station in the country. Two radio stations. We don't have a government radio station at the time.
And what you heard that night was that Walter Rodney had been killed on the news. Can you recall? Had died?
That Walter Rodney had died, I believe, and I'm saying 34 years ago. It was after the flight that it came to my attention.
I understand that. It was after you came back.
Yes.
But you say the radio station indicated or carried the news that someone by the name of Walter Rodney had died.
I believe so.
And then the newspaper, the following day with the
No, I
photograph,
couldn't remember which day it was after the flight.
a few days after.
Yes.
Would it be a month or less than a month?
It would be less than a month.
About a week or less than a week?
I would have to guess, but I really would be the article.
But it was closed.
A week or
a week or two.
I would say a week, maybe.
And what newspaper was that?
I really don't recall, but what I'll tell you, there was, I think the Catholic Standard was a newspaper that I looked at from time to time. And the Ghanaian Chronicle was a newspaper that I looked at as well. And, but I do not recall which papers it is that I saw this picture, but the picture that I saw was a facial picture.
Okay, it was one of either the Catholic Standard or the Chronicle or one of those newspapers, and you saw his picture. Was there an article that, a written article that accompanied the photograph?
There would have been an article in the state media.
You say would have been. Having seen the photograph, which resembled someone who had transported earlier, did you read the article? Were you curious to see what the article was saying?
Actually, ma'am, I will say that what caught my attention was the report by Dr. Walter Rodney's brother. I think he made the report to a Caribbean News Agency, and I don't recall how, but that report that he made to the news agency is one which I read with very keen interest. Our own media reports were very scanty at the national level, but the one that really interests me and I paid keen attention to is a report that was done by his brother a few days after to the Caribbean News Agency.
All right, so your first answer is you can't recall if you read the article that accompanied the photograph, but you did pay attention, you were drawn to the report by Dr. Rodney's brother.
Yes.
And this report indicated as well that Walter Rodney had died.
Yes.
And it suggested that he had been killed by a bomb blast.
Yes.
Did it want to indicate if any third parties were involved, apart, from...
Yes. When I read or I heard the statement by his brother, I myself, at that time, and I remember again, this is the second anomaly I had, that the report by his brother left a lot of open questions in my mind about what really had transpired that day. The brother account was one that was extremely unimpressive from where I sat. And I wondered, and I remember wondering, why would Dr. Walter Rodney and his brother have been venturing into that kind of adventure?
Okay.
And I remember that.
Right. And so that struck you, but did it also cause you to think, not just about the events of June 30, but 40? Did it also cause you to think, to consider whether there was a link between what Donald Rodney was saying and the photographs you had seen on the paper of the man who bore a resemblance to the man you had transported on the 14th of June?
Yes.
So it caused you to wonder then if you had transported someone who was involved in the killing or the death of Walter Rodney.
Yes.
And at that point, did it cause you to consider whether you should check the passenger list that in relation to the flight on which you had transported this man, the woman, and the children?
No, ma'am. I actually had no interest in rechecking the passenger list, but I remember developing a personal interest in evaluating in my own mind the circumstances of Dr. Walter Rodney's death that night.
Yes.
And I was not, and in fact, I always hoped for a moment like this in the history of Ghana when we will find a reason why. But I remember at the time, I having a lot of question marks in my mind about how did Dr. Walter really die.
And one of those questions in relation to the circumstances under which Walter Rodney died would have been, did the man I transport play a role in this?
Yes.
And what was his role if he did something?
Exactly.
But you didn't really, as a very junior officer, make any inquiry.
No, I did not.
And related to that, if I may, were you at all aware of any police investigation into the death of Walter Rodney?
And again, from the state media, I remember the government today having inquiry, and I think that, if I remember correctly, I think they brought in some British investigators.
Before that, okay, thank you.
No, that's what I know.
And were you ever aware of any photos of anyone who was named as Gregory Smith being posted or being circulated as being wanted by the police in relation to the death of Walter Rodney?
Yes, in subsequent years, yes.
In subsequent years,
Yes.
not immediately after?
No.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I asked to break for council purposes. Council break.
For your comfort, Chair, just inquiring.
No, it's not.
It's a good reason, but the inquiry you made, whether it's good and proper reason.
So the way that I'm break,
Mr. Chairman, may I respectfully suggest a shorter break today, bearing in mind the fact that the witness may have a little bit of torture time, a truncated break.
okay, so then, that's your one, we do 15 minutes now.
Yes, please.
Okay, we wait.
Exactly at 2:15 we do.
Council break, return at 2:15.